Ashwin, I come back to you. Well, the Rockefeller Foundation has really made substantial and varied investments in building resilience. You mentioned one example, which is ASEAN Cities Climate Change Resilience Network. We know about climate smart rural development. More recently, 100 resilient cities. So you can probably tell us about what you have seen among all of these as the most successful one in terms of really surfacing resilient solutions. But I would like also to hear, with all of that, what is missing? What are the gaps? What you're not addressing?
Okay. Maybe I'll just take the back end of the question first, the gaps, and I'll bring it back to some of the conceptual points I was trying to make in my earlier comments. And maybe I'll just pick out two things. I mean, firstly, I think the point I was making earlier about resilience and developing the concept of resilience being important is it's not to engage in a sort of esoteric exercise, but it is. It has certain characteristics. When we talk about a resilient community or resilience programming, it can sometimes we can sometimes treat it as you sort of add resilience and stir and you'll be fine. But actually, there's other things that you need to think about and accept. For example, it might be more expensive, and there's a trade-off there. So, for example, we talk about redundancies within resilience, that people have choices and options, and that's actually part of being resilient. And so you can either have serendipitous redundancies that happen to exist, or you invest in redundancies that actually give communities or systems or whatever choices. And I'll give you a little anecdote of this from, again, sorry to keep drawing on urban work, but that's just sort of where my head is right now. But we in Asia, in the city of Surat in Western India, they had an awful flood about 8 years ago. 75% of the city was underwater for a week in an urban context where you don't have strong social networks, etc. So there was a real fear of a collapse of public health and outbreaks of cholera and all of that. Didn't happen. Why? Because actually of the inefficiencies of the lack of a centralized gas supply system in that city. So everyone actually had gas cylinders in their house. Now it's more expensive per unit of gas to organize your gas system that way. But in that situation, it actually meant that everyone could boil water in their house for the week. They didn't rely, there wasn't a central system that was there to collapse. Yet for the previous 10 years, they've been talking about how do we make the system more efficient, how do we introduce a centrally piped gas system, etc. So that's, we need to think through the trade-offs in investing, and I think that's part of the challenge and the gap right now. The other one, which I hinted at earlier, is this notion that resilience is kind of a public good, and it's not always easy to know where the incentives are and who's going to pay for what in order to invest in it, and it needs collaborative action, but where's the money going to come from? To bring a food security example there are many cities that are beginning to think about their food security resilience, their overdependence on supply chains from far away, the importance of localized production, at least for short cycle crops. And I'm from India, and the most common debate is the price of onions, because in Indian food, anyone who cooks Indian food, everything needs onions, unless you're Jain. It's the minute you get a food disruption, prices spike, and it has a huge impact on low-income households in cities. But where's the debate on how can you have a 10% buffer where you can ensure that 10 or 15% of the onions in any city in India are produced within a 10-kilometer radius, for example? How are you ever going to do that when the price of land is so at odds with the notion of urban agriculture or peri-urban agriculture? So the incentives are not aligned as yet, and we need to do a lot more work on both from a public policy point of view, as well as the multi-stakeholder perspective on this is to actually accept that if your city in this case wants to remain competitive, it has to be resilient, and you're going to have to accept some of those trade-offs and choices. So, I don't know if that's quite I'm answering your question of where's the gap. We can do all this programming, but there are some big forces actually that are not going to automatically take us towards resilience as the right answer or something that's absolutely what we should be investing in. So, not to sound skeptical, but we have to push again. So we have to build the case. We have to keep investing in making the argument, generating the evidence, creating a public policy agenda, getting multiple stakeholders working together on this.